after writing the Endineering book, I wanted to talk to you about designing it. I get asked a lot about what it's like to write a book, and I talk about the writing process and the content of the book. Obviously, lots and lots of discussion about that, but not much about what it's like to design a book. So I thought I'd put something together, a small small video about how to design the book and what went into designing the book. So let's look at that. So the first element, which I think was important and built on the theme of this endlessness of consumption, where the consumer relentlessly has experiences of onboarding and usage, and they don't have experiences of endings. And I thought the Penrose stairs works well for this, and or steps. And I think this sort of optical illusion of endless descent works really well in terms of the context of endless consumption. The Penrose Steps by Roger Penrose and published in the Psychology Journal influenced Isha, and then Isha then influenced Penrose, and they worked together in this sort of strange collaboration between a psychologist and an artist, and worked on lots of different elements of that together, this sort of infiniteness in these sort of optical illusions, as it were. And these are really great. I love these designs. And also, I used to work at Us2, the design agency, digital product agency. I was head of design there for many years. And in that time, we'd done Monument Valley. I wasn't the artist of Monument Valley, obviously. That was Ken Wong. But obviously, there's a lot of thoughts around that going on at the time, and the sort of optical illusions that Ken and the team were putting into Monument Valley. And so there's some level of a nod to that, or that exposure of to that influence, maybe what I was thinking around this endlessness on the front cover of the Endineering book. So I started to work on this these sort of themes from Isha and the infinite steps. And I also like the idea of this sort of flowing of water downwards, coming away, like some sort of residue from the consumption. And that sort of started to work well as a theme. So I started to build on some of that. As an aside, I thought it'd be good to sort of see how that residue then hits and impacts the environment. And I've always really liked these sort of geometric cutaway drawings of geography. And I thought it might be nice to have one of those at the bottom, showing the endlessness of consumption and its impact on geography, the natural environment. And so I started to cluster these two things together in terms of maybe presenting these geographic things related to this consumerism. So I started to really do sort of early sketches around this and start to develop ideas around this. And I started to quite like these themes, sketching out the geography elements, how would that look? And obviously this is on paper and pencil, so it's a really, obviously the best method of sort of sketching out things. And then it started to mature. So I was actually really getting into it at this point, and really enjoyed the process of sketching as well, and having these principles. And I think some of the stuff really worked well in sketch, and I don't think I was able to capture it as well on the book in digital as well. So I think some of them work better in sketch, and started to work how these could collaborate together, these two worlds of the consumer endlessness and that geography at the bottom, and see how this might work together with some sort of title. At this point, I hadn't landed on the Endineering title just yet. So as much as I like the word Endineering, at the time I thought that might be a bit too provocative or too complicated. And but I'm glad I have called it Endineering now. And so start to work that into the theme as well, and see how that might work with the title and the author title, etc. So eventually committed and started to build this in Illustrator and on the computer, and started to build out sketches of this, start to lay out the complicated, and it is quite complicated, building Penrose steps in Illustrator, because you've got to play around with a lot of the shading and how the steps look and the shape and size of the steps, and that all of that builds into the optical illusion of this endlessness. In the center of these steps, I wanted to have something which was like the oil coming in, or some sort of residue coming out of there, which would gather and go through the center of the whole steps, so the sort of square of those whole steps. And in those, we could also see underneath that sort of operations, the logistics of consumerism, people working in the background, creating chemistry, data, and the infrastructure, the sort of servers and stuff like that. I also didn't want it just to be about physical products. The theme isn't just about physical products, it's about digital, physical and service sectors. It's all types of consumerism. We're doing the same endlessness with all types of consumerism, so that I needed to show that. So there's banking in there with the debt thing, and then there's the electricity coming into it and the data coming into it with the Ethernet cable, and some of the people doing server type operations. There's cars in there and planes in there, and also the sort of likes from Facebook into this sort of theme. I was also really interested in what sort of material, the behavior of that sort of black matter as it comes down, that oily, gluey sort of thing. And to capture that, I was playing around with real ink and oil and trying to light that really boldly so it would be a high contrast with lots of shapes in it. So trying to capture that and understand how that worked was quite important to how that impacted the image on the front of the book. And that then drips down through the typography into that sort of triangle shape that we've currently got today on the front of the book. And so I played around with that for quite some time to get that look right and looking like oil. And then there's that matures, I sort of do the lockup between that and the title and the author title. So it starts to, then the oil starts dripping through aspects of the book, and you start to see how that can all work together. Going back to details of the illustration. So as you can see, there's loads of shops on the illustration. I actually put out a call for people to come up with ideas about what they could be called. So some of these are sort of in different languages, and they're about waste and consumption and the infiniteness of consumption in different languages. So there's some Italian, I think, in there, and that was great to put that out there, and like people came up with names for like Air Floors one. I thought it was great. So all of these come up with like people who've been following the theme and following the production of the book. So there was a little sort of competition for everyone. As you can see from the details in this, there's loads of different people as they walk around. So there's all sorts of types of consumer as they walk around, and I thought it was really important to get this sort of everyone in there type thing. And they all walk past the debt relationship at the beginning of that sort of the top. Well, visually it looks like the top is the closest element to the viewer, that debt sort of bank element, and then they walk down, consume, and then they consume, and then go down the escalator into the gate for taking flights. And also you see the logistics of that tower and how they're distributing drones out, and you can see people operating underneath, like the chemistry of and the chemicals of how we create consumer products, like maybe it's plastics, I don't know, and people working in the back end. Maybe that's a sort of call center and somebody working in the big server room. Maybe they're operating the bank. And then there's sort of the elements of social media, sort of endless likes and people being happy and then angry, and this just endless consumption of everything in there. And there's even like a little cell tower to sort of impress upon us about the digital aspect of this as much as all the other aspects of it. So it's goes across many different themes. And when we start to cluster it, so now moving on to how it's built together into the book, onto the front and back page. I like the typography and how that's laid out and keeping it really nice and clean and white, and I think that helps the oil aspect of it punch through. And then put the sort of Wired quote on there from Wired when I was in Wired in 2019. Moving on to inside the book, so let's talk about that for a little bit. The previous book I built a lot of this book on in terms of shape, dimensions, etc. And I really like the cover by Alvaro Arugi from last time, so that was really nice with the sort of the dead phone thing on the cover, and I think that resonated a lot with people. Also tried to have that sort of strong halfway point in the cover for the Endineering book as well. So the dimensions are the same from the previous one. I also picked up on some of the aspects of the typography from the last one. So in the previous one, there's Montserrat bold, and for heading subheadings, and also Algeria sans bold, and the light version of that. Those are really nice fonts. Still quite pleased with those, and they work well together still. Aspects I felt sort of there was some aspects of the last book which on the layout inside didn't really work as well for me as I thought they could do. So I've been playing around with this book and seeing how I could tighten some of that up. And so in this one, I actually pumped up the font size for the titles quite a bit and made that a lot stronger, and also put in this full stop on some of the pages. And then I dropped the font size for the running text, so that helped tighten it up a bit, I think, and made the page look a bit more balanced graphically. And you can see how that works on different pages here. With the also developed this sort of chapter indicator as well, which I quite like because I think that centers everything. I put a lot more effort into centering some of these chapters in terms of layout on the page. I also wanted something which was on the blank pages. I wanted something which was something more pictorial, a bit more interesting than graphical, which was I took a load of photographs of broken or ended relationship things of consumerism, so things like plastic components and broken elements and memory cards and stuff. Another element of the book, because this book is a lot more complicated in terms of layouts and how the structure of the inside of the book is in comparison to the previous book. The previous book was quite a narrative structure, so it's quite easy to build it in terms of chapters and just text and photographs in that. But this one's a bit more of an instruction manual, so it has some different themes and different components to it, so you need to think about that. So this is an example of a tool page. So legacy number is a tool that readers can use and take up when they're doing their product development. And also this sort of example of a case study, so this one from Stufter. So these have got a different type of graphical layout, so it's a 2-column layout, and there's sort of this graphical element which will help like identify these pages within the book. So these are scattered within the book, these case studies and tools to use. This book also has some elements in it which we need to structure in bigger themes. So I think the book's in like 4 different sections, so they needed to be sort of punched through and have some sort of foundational element which will make you leap into the next section. So this is an example of these double page spreads which would punctuate that sort of breakage between one section and another. And once you've done loads of the layout and you'll get into a point, so there is an element of like, let's print all this out and see what it looks like, because you do see things differently when it's on paper and printed out, and it does give you a sense of how much content you've done when you've printed it all out, which is quite overwhelming. So seeing some of those and how that all works together is pretty impressive, and laying it all out, and you see things that you might not see as you do it on the computer in a more closed system. So that's it, I think, a good exercise to do when you're building a book like this. You also see once you get to a point where you've uploaded all of the elements onto the system, you go through a period of like uploading it. It says it's not working well because you need to get in within the guides of the system, and then once you've done that, it sort of accepts it. And when you do that a few times to a point where the whole book's being accepted as in terms of its layout and within the grid system that they build. And then you get to a point where you can order some copies. And okay, so we've got a box here, which is, I'm hoping, full of the book, the Endineering book. So I'm going to just open it now. So this sort of unboxing, see what's in here. There's a load of copies, should be like around 20 I ordered. There we go, loads of it. Loads of the Endineering book. Great. With the quote from Wired on the top about the theme of endings. Let's just check through the see if it looks good. Printing looks fine. It's in sharp. Pleased with the font I picked. I really like this font. And of course, when you've done a paperback copy, it doesn't take actually much effort to get into a hardback copy, and the hardback copy really was nice. It's a nice thing to have. It is obviously a bit more valuable to sort of have it as well. So it didn't take much effort to adjust some of aspects of the book and its layout to then put it into a hardback copy. So I'd done that and then put those, added that to the system as well. And then once getting it, it's super exciting going through the first thing. It's also very anxious inducing because, if there is a problem, it is obviously a big problem. You've printed a book on it. So it's quite difficult to go through it. But I'm really delighted with it. And it really came out well this time. Not that it didn't come out well last time. I really enjoyed it. It's loads of nice little details I've put into it. And I'm really pleased with some of the aspects of it and how it lays out, how it reads, and what it's like for the consumer, I think, of the book. So really enjoyed it. Some of the layouts, done lots of illustrations for the book, and of course when you've done the paperback and the hardback, you then move on to the ebook. And the ebook is, I've done a bit of digital in the past and occasionally used to do HTML, but it's really not worth trying to attempt it, in my opinion. There's loads of people which are really good at it. So I often go onto Fiverr, give them the files, and then somebody, it's a nice job for them to give somebody else some money to build the ebook product. And they know so much more about it, and there's such a lot of complex details about getting it right for very early versions of the Amazon Kindle to very up-to-date versions of the latest technology which people are reading ebooks on. And so it's well worth doing that and giving that to somebody who really knows what they're doing. So have you enjoyed going through some of that and hearing how the book got built and what I was doing in that and the thinking process that it took to go through it all? Thanks very much. And if you want to buy the book, you can go on Amazon or Smashwords or all sorts of platforms to buy the book and see what you think of it. I'd love to hear your thoughts on what you think of it in terms of a graphic detail layout project as well. Thanks very much. See you then. Bye.